This is the Photoshop color palette I've used for every custom minifigure to this point. I created this list of swatches from this image which, to the best of my knowledge, was all the colors LEGO were producing at the time I made it. I always felt that this color palette was pretty limited. In particular, you'll notice that you only have 4 grayscale colors to choose from here, which made certain characters really difficult to replicate, but I always worked around it. However, I had no idea exactly how limited this color palette was until I realized there was no medium green on this list, which was kind of an important color for the figure I was working on, and so I started looking a little deeper. I also noticed that the colors I had in my palette never 100% matched the supposed same colors from the Mechafig extension. Mechafig's light nougat didn't match my light nougat, for example. Even the blacks looked slightly different, but I never gave it too much thought because I just assumed it was the lighting or something to do with Blender. So, to satisfy my curiosity, I checked the hex values of these plastics in Blender and compared them to the values of mine in Photoshop, and sure enough, they were completely different. And not only was the black and the light nougat different, every single color in my custom palette was wrong. And I say wrong because ultimately it's the Mechafig extension I'm using for these figures, so I trust it a lot more than some random image I found on Google like 2 years ago. Especially since, using my advanced counting skills, there's a lot more colors in the Mechafig palette than mine, including the medium green color I was looking for. So there was only one thing for me to do here. I needed a new palette. So I started from scratch and began the incredibly tedious journey of applying a color to a piece in Mechafig, examining its material, finding the color value in hex, copying it, creating a new swatch in Photoshop, pasting the hex value, renaming the swatch appropriately, and repeating about 75 times. Now this would be pretty painful by itself, but when I got to this shade of purple, you'll notice around 4 colors from the end, Photoshop crashed on me and I had to start all over again. I'm not exaggerating when I say that in the 7 or 8 years I've had this totally legitimate copy of Photoshop, it had never crashed on me before, literally not once. Whatever, I went to bed and I grinded it out the next day, and the end result is kind of beautiful. This is my color palette before, each color slightly inaccurate with just, for example, 2 shades of red, 4 grayscale colors, and a grand total of just 40 colors. And here is my new 100% accurate color palette with like 7 reds, 8 grayscale colors, including an entire shade of grey I didn't know existed, and a total of 75 colors. The amount of shades and variations of pretty much every primary color of my palette just doubled, and all of them now have a Mechafig base to match, which means that for all future minifigures I not only can properly utilize transparency on my prints without fear of color mismatches, but I also just have a huge array of new official LEGO colors to use going forward. I can't believe it took over 15 months for me to notice and fix this, but now that I have, making these figures should be a lot easier and more enjoyable going forward. So yeah, that was my discovery. Thanks for watching. Farewell.